Barry loser. I am still not lollies a loser. Commas put in by Jim Smith. Hoverpoos. You know when someone's horrible to you in a dream and you wake up really annoyed with them? That's what happened to me with my best friend Bunky. In the dream I was my favorite TV character, future rat boy, and Bunky was his annoying sidekick Not Bird. We were in the mayor's office, which looked exactly like my granny's house. You're the only ones who can save us from the Hoverpoos, said the mayor, who was played by my teacher, Mr. Hodge-Podge. Hoverpoos were the invention of Professor Smuggly, who in the dream was Gordon Smuggly from our class at school. Gordon Smuggly has the most perfect name for himself ever in the history of having a name, because he looks like a Gordon and is smug and ugly. Professor Smuggly had given all the dogs in town his hoverpoo potion so that now, instead of their poos landing splat on the ground, they hovered 10 centimeters above it. They're everywhere, said the mayor, screaming as a hoverpoo floated up and bumped into his sock. It was about the same size as Not Bird, Bunky, and the same color, brown, and also floated, like birds can. Don't worry, Mayor Hodge-Podge, we'll stop Professor Smuggly. I said, and I looked at his face to see if he was impressed, but he was too busy screaming and kicking at the hoverpoo to notice. Because it was a dream, all of a sudden we were in Professor Smuggly's laboratory and I turned myself into a fly and was sitting on Not Bird's beak. What's all this craziness about? Said Professor Smuggly, holding a test tube with brown bubbling potion in it. Ooh, can I have a sip? Said Not Bird, flying over to the test tube. He perched on the edge and dipped his beak in. Ah, he said, and he turned straight into a hoverpoo. A talking hoverpoo. That could be useful, said Professor Smuggly, flicking me off Not Bird's head. Not Bird, how do you fancy being my right-hand man? He said. Or should I say right-hand poo? But Bunky's my right-hand poo. I screamed, but because I was a fly it came out as a whisper. Bar why, you'll be late for school, my mum shouted up the stairs, and I woke up, not a fly anymore, and late for school. Grandpa Hodge-Podge. Thanks for making me late, said Bunky at the top of my road where he waits for me in the morning, and he wasn't being sarcastic either. Oh, I'm so sorry. What, do you have to meet Professor Smuggly or something? I said, in full future rat boy sarcastic mode. Who's Professor Smuggly? Said Bunky, picking his nose and eating it for breakfast. Don't pretend you don't know, hoverpoo, I said, and I gave him my evil stare. What's a hoverpoo? Said Bunky, and he scrunched himself up into a poo shape and pretended to hover around, doing blow-offs, and I crumpled to the floor like a deck chair being folded up, weeing myself with laughter. The walk to school takes us past Granny Harumpadunk's house, which I've been trying to avoid ever since she started going out with my teacher, Mr. Hodge-Podge. I usually manage to sneak past just before they have their disgusting morning kiss at the front gate, but because we were late, Bunky and me got there the exact millisecond their dried-up old lips started snogging. I closed my eyes to stop myself being sick and tried to tiptoe past, but what with Bunky doing his hoverpoo impression and me tripping over Granny's empty milk bottles, and Mr. Hodge-Podge kissing Granny with his eyes open anyway, it didn't really work. Ooh, Hodge, you can give Barry and Blinky a lift, said Granny, so that was how we ended up in Mr. Hodge-Podge's car. Hodge is Granny Harumpadunk's nickname for Mr. Hodge-Podge, who's the happiest person in the whole wide world, amen, now that he's going out with her. Isn't it the most incredibly beautiful day? He said, in his new woolly jumper that matches Granny's. He was squeezing into the front seat of his car, all wheezing and blowing off, and I looked at Bunky's eyes in the rearview mirror and did a little snortle. Was a bit annoyed that we were getting a lift with Mr. Hodge-Podge, mainly because of how embarrassing it was, but also because I couldn't go into Three Thumb Rita's. Three Thumb Rita's is the tiny sweet shop halfway between my house and school. It's owned by Rita, who has an extra thumb on one of her hands, which sounds disgusting but actually isn't once you've seen it every day for a million years. She even sells little thumb sweets, which are my complete and utter favorites. Nig 99 right Taya. I screamed out of the car as we zoomed past, because I didn't want her to think I'd started going to another sweet shop because of her third thumb or something. I don't think she heard or saw me though. There's Barry and Bunky with their new granddad, shouted Darren Darrenofsky as we drove through the front gates at school, Mr. Hodge-Podge blowing off to the song on the radio. I'm not with them, shouted Bunky out of the window as we parked, and he got out and zoomed off like a talking hoverpoo, not that it mattered because his first lesson was with me and Mr. Hodge-Podge anyway. Jealous little hares. I thought we could do something really fun today, Mr. Hodge-Podge said once we'd all sat down at our desks. As you know, my new girlfriend is Barry Loser's granny, and this lesson is all about something she said last night. Everyone laughed, and I imagined Mr. Hodge-Podge accidentally treading on a couple of hoverpoos and floating off into the sunset, never to be seen again. Well, we were watching TV, and there was an advert for one of these mobile phone thingamajigs, he said. Darren Darrenofsky was scraping the back of my neck with his ruler. I turned round and he did a little burp and blew it into my face. Barry's granny was amazed, said Mr. Hodge-Podge. Telephones you can carry around, she said. Ooh, what will they think of next? If I wasn't Barry Loser and Mr. Hodge-Podge wasn't going out with Granny Harumpadunk, I would have laughed along with the rest of the class at his impression of an old granny. But I am. And he is. So I didn't. So today's lesson is called What Will They Think of Next? Mr. Hodge-Podge said, and he pointed at me. Barry, what do you think they'll think of next? Ooh, Barry first, what a surprise, said Tracy Pilchard, and her, Donatella and Sharonella all started giggling, not that I cared, because this was exactly the kind of lesson I'm completely brilliant and amazing at. I was thinking it'd be cool if when you thought of something, it popped up in a bubble above your head like in cartoons, I said, because that was what happened in a future Rat Boy episode once. What's keel? Said Jocelyn Twiggs, and I rolled my eyes because everyone knows that keel is how future Rat Boy says cool. I looked at Mr. Hodge-Podge to see if he was impressed with my keel idea, but he wasn't even listening. What about you, Tracy? He said after the length of a whole episode of Future Rat Boy. He was staring at a photo of Granny he had on his desk. I reckon they should make more dual jewelry, said Tracy, and Donatella and Sharonella both agreed, even though they all had about 500 bits of jewelry on already. Tracy's arm Gordon, said Mr. Hodge-Podge, and I looked over at Gordon smugly for the first time since my dream. He was sitting at the back of the classroom, playing on his new phone. Thank you, Mr. Hodge-Podge, he said, well now, looking up from his game. There has been something bothering me for a while, and I suppose this is as good a time as any to make it known, publicly, so to speak, he carried on, and I rolled my eyes so much that it made me feel dizzy. I think they should make a future Rat Boy film, he said, and I felt all the little hairs everywhere on my entire body stand up on end. I think my little hairs are even bigger fans of future Rat Boy than I am, because whenever anyone else mentions him they get instantly jealous. Yeah, said everybody, because it was actually a really good idea. A future Rat Boy film would be keel times a million. What's all this future Rat Boy business? Asked Mr. Hodge-Podge, looking up from the photo. I was going to stand up and explain, seeing as I'm future Rat Boy's #1 fan, but I was still a bit dizzy from my eye roll, so I just sat there like a loser. Future Rat Boy is the keelest TV show in the whole wide world ever, said Bunky, copying what I was going to say. He looked at Gordon and did a little snortle, but only because he wanted to go on Gordon's phone. Well, I can see that Bunky and Gordon are quite the experts on future Ratman, said Mr. Hodge-Podge, and I could feel all my clothes being pushed away from my skin by my jealous little hairs. Fico's Supermarket. The next day was Saturday, except I call it Sat, because I've started shortening my words to save time for keeler stuff. Sat is my favorite day because all me and Bunky do for the whole of it is play it completely and utterly keel. Like last Sat, when we went to the ginormous new Fico's Supermarket in town. Let's go to Fico's again, I said when came downstairs for breakfast and found Bunky in the living room, watching TV as usual. My dad was watching TV too, but through the window from the garden, which is where he usually is for the whole of his Saturday. Do we have to do that again? Said Bunky, doing his loser face. Do you want me to send you home? I said, and he stopped doing his loser face and started doing his worried one, because I sent him home last week for not saying I was his brilliant and amazing leader, and only let him back once he apologized. Going to Fico's supermarket has been my favorite thing to do since I saw the episode of Future Rat Boy where he went into one and bought a hover pizza. Wow, look Bunky, they've got that new washing powder from the advert on TV. I said as we walked into Fico's, except I was running a bit, because I was so excited. Ooh, washing powder, excuse me while I wee myself, said Bunky, trying to be sarcastic but just coming across as annoying. Salute it now, I ordered, and Bunky did his loser face, then a tiny little salute. Saluting stuff is my new favorite thing to do, by the way. A mum walked past with her kids and I rolled my eyes to her like mums do to each other, because in a way Bunky is like my child who I have to teach what is keel and what isn't. As we walked up to the ready meals section to see if they'd started selling hover pizzas yet, I sensed something familiar and annoying to my right. Looking down the household goods aisle, I saw Darren Darrenofsky with his mum, who I recognized because she looked just like him except with permed hair and a dress on. Darren had wrapped himself in a whole tube of cling film and was caterpillaring along the floor like one of those insects with loads of legs that turn into butterflies that I can never remember the name of. Darren's mum was watching him all calmly, but in the way mums look just before they start shouting. I leaned against a massive pyramid of toilet rolls and got myself cozy for watching Darren being told off. I was just about to order Bunky to salute Darren's going to get told off-ness when he started dancing around all bunkily and tapping me on the shoulder and shouting salute. Salute! 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 There is such a thing as over-saluting, Bunky, I said, turning round to look, then immediately realized that there wasn't.